Welcome to From Small Things. My name is Sue and I'm here in Southeast Pennsylvania and I'm a scrappy quilter. So welcome to my channel. I'm just doing some hand quilting on this quilt. Right now I'm at the, not the outside border yet, but I'm at the setting triangles here on the outside, and all the rest of the interior of the quilt is done. So I'm making good progress on it. This part that I have left took hand quilt. I'm guessing it will take me another 2 days at least to finish that up. And then I can square the quilt up and get some binding on. And the binding usually also takes me 2 days. So it's looking like next week I will have a finish to share with you. But I just wanted to share some thoughts on my quilting again this week. I know I have a lot of new subscribers, so I'll just go over some of this a little quickly, because I did do an entire video already on hand quilting, and that is episode 16. But just to give you a shorthand version of what I do, these are mostly the tools that I use. I have my Dritz thimble here. I thread a lot of needles all at once, and all of the needles here on the side too, they will all go on here all at once. There's a magnet on the side. This little holder here is old. It says June Taylor on it. I think I got this as a gift. The last time I looked for one, I couldn't find one anywhere. But I think some people have told me that you might be able to find it on eBay. It is very handy. I mean, I've used this for decades. The thread I use is Coats & Clark hand quilting thread. And I have my handmade, homemade pin cushion here. I got this cute little container at the thrift store for 10 cents. And I just got some of my own fabric out and stuffed it with some fiberfill. And I keep a lot of threaded needles in here. That way, when one of my needles is done, I just pick the next one out and I can keep going. I like efficiency. It's not necessarily about speed for me, although it does increase my speed, but it's more about what makes sense to me in order just to keep an even flow and keep moving. So that's why I have this system here where I thread all of my needles all at once, and then I usually put about 8 needles in here at a time, and then it just makes it easy just to grab the next one and go. Now the other thing I wanted to talk about was I noticed on this quilt I was having a little bit of a hard time when I was in the very, very, very center of the quilt. It's a large quilt, and when this is the only part of the quilt that you can see, and all of the rest of it is draped down on the floor, hanging on the floor. Sometimes when you're working and you have to turn your hoop this way or that way, it's easy to get confused about which blocks you've done, like the direction that you want to move in. I was going to say which blocks you've done. You can obviously see which ones are done, but I want to make sure that I don't miss any at the end, and that I'm going in a direction where I'm working systematically, through. So I have one of these clamps on the outside here. Now this is a Q-snap frame, and it's like a PVC pipe. This is size 17 inches, and this is all I've ever used, and so this is what I'm used to. And it comes with 4 of these clamps. You just lay your quilt on top, and then you just push down on it, and it's secure. Now, in the beginning, I used to use 4 of them all the time, and then if you turn it towards the center a little bit, it will loosen this a little bit. You should have it a little bit loose. You don't want it to be super tight like a drum. You have to have a little bit of a give in it. I've changed my ways over the years, so there's so much about hand quilting that is about feel. How does it feel for you and what works for you? For me, I either have to have one clamp on, sometimes I'll put another one on, and it depends how I turn it too, and where the drag is and where the looseness is. So it changes. And so sometimes I just get like a little clamp like this. I got these at our local dollar store. And so sometimes I just put it on the outside there. And that little bit is enough that that's going to hold for me and still allow some give in it. So that's just another little, I usually have two of them with me. So it's whatever the quilt needs for the space that I'm at. And that's about it for that. Oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. When I'm in the center and I'm not sure which way to move my hoop, this is a little trick that I do. I have a pin. I have one with a blue head and one with a yellow head here. And they're long. And so if I'm working on this section and say I know I have to move it this way, I just put a pin in here. And then that way I know when I move my hoop that way, then I just automatically take the pin and move it to the next spot that I need to go. And that way I don't get confused. Again, I'm at the outside border, so I don't need these anymore to tell me which way to go. But trust me, it's very easy to lose your perspective on where you are when you're quilting, and it's just one thing that helps to keep me straight. The other thing that I've done in the past is I get a piece of masking tape and I will put it on this part of the clamp, and I just get a Sharpie and I just draw an arrow on it, and then wherever I put this one, you know, if I need to go in that direction, I will put this clamp over here, and then the arrow will be pointing towards whichever direction I need to move in, then the piece of tape on there. So I've done that already too. But like I said, there are times when I don't need it, and some quilts I really need it. This one too, this is set on point. So everything is basically set on a diagonal. And sometimes that can throw you off too, because it's not just straight, even rows, it's diagonal rows. So that can kind of throw you off a little bit too. So those are just two little things that I do to help me keep straight and make sure I don't miss any spots. As I was quilting, I was thinking about how many stitches per inch I do, and in the quilting world it seems like the gold standard is about 14 stitches per inch, and I have some opinions on that and I will share them with you now. First of all, that seems to be the gold standard, and it is a lot of stitches per inch. And I have seen quilts that have very small, meticulous, perfect stitches. It absolutely deserves respect. And the skill that it takes is a skill that I don't have. And I just wanted to say that if you're a hand quilter, especially if you're starting out, don't let that be the thing that stops you from giving hand quilting a try. There are a lot of variables with how you get that number. I don't know what my stitches are, how many I get per inch, and it doesn't bother me. I'm not interested in it. I have just no interest at all in trying to reach that goal, which for me is impossible. And I can tell you right now, what I'm going through is very difficult because there's a seam on the back. I can feel it with my needle. Let me see if I can show you. Right here, you see where my needle is coming up. There's a seam right here between this fabric and that fabric. And on the front, I'm right in that seam. I can see my stitches right here. And I can feel it on the front. I cannot get very short, consistent, tiny stitches in that. So that's one thing that might hold you up from getting really small stitches. Another thing is this part here, this is a sheet and this is a sheet. This part is the main body of the back of the quilt. So much easier to quilt through than this one is. This one is just there. I have a little piece on the left of this and I have a little piece of this on the other side on the right. I can feel immediately when I'm in this sheet. This one is a tighter weave and it's just harder to get through. So even if I bought all of this fabric new from you know, current designers, if I started mixing designers like let's say Tula Pink or Riley Blake or Kay Fassett, just because they're new designers and new fabric doesn't mean their fabrics are all the same. And if you're a hand quilter, you can feel the difference when your needle is going through. So that also might give you stitches that you know, are not the same because one fabric is different than the other. And on this quilt, certainly with these vintage fabrics, I find that to be true. Some of them, like this one and this one specifically right here, are a coarser weave, almost like a feed sack, and it is the threads in it are a little bit coarser, so it's a little bit heavier, but it's a little bit more of an open weave, so it's actually a little easier to go through. And this red one here is more like, it's still an older fabric, but it's more of what we would recognize as like a traditional weave of today's fabric. And so this one's a little bit more difficult. Not that it's hard, but I can tell the difference between these two. So that's another factor that might determine your stitch length also. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. Some other things that will affect your stitch length are the type of batting that you use. That makes a big difference. I know when I first started quilting, I used polyester batting, and that was actually good for me to learn on as a new hand quilter because it's like quilting through air. You have no resistance at all. Your needle just goes right through the fabric, you know, just right through. Over the years, I've changed my batting, and now I use warm and natural batting. Let me see a little bit of it here. It's a cotton, it's mostly cotton. It's 80% cotton and 20% polyester. And the 20% is, there's a scrim on the top, which you can't see, but you know it's there when you hand quilt. And that is the thinnest layer of the polyester. It's like bonded on the top, so that when your quilt is washed and used, that the batting doesn't break apart and bunch up in your quilt. So that keeps the whole top of the batting secure. And it works. It's great. It doesn't affect how it drapes at all. It still drapes really nicely, but it does affect your quilting stitches. I can feel the difference in this as opposed to using 100% cotton batting. Now, if you use 100% cotton batting, you do have to make sure that your quilting stitches are much closer together. And again, that goes to once you wash it and start using it, if there's nothing on that batting to hold it stable and steady, it's going to shift apart and bunch up. And so it's easier to quilt through though. So if you use 100% cotton, you're going to be able to get smaller stitches. And if you use wool, the same thing goes for wool too. That's very, very easy to quilt through. Some of the other battings out there, I can't speak to those. I haven't tried every single batting. I usually buy my batting on a big roll, so that's just what I have and that's what I use. But that does have a big effect on what your stitches will look like in the end. Now for me too, I've gotten to the point where I don't really think about my stitches anymore. I've just have a rhythm that I just do. And we use what they call a rocking stitch, which is you're going to go down and up and then push down and come up and push down and come up. And I usually take about 3 or 4 stitches at a time. And then I just keep repeating that. And again, I've been doing it so often, I don't think about it. Sometimes I run into an obstacle, like a place where there's a lot of seams come together, and then I might have to do just one single stitch at a time. So because I sit for so many hours a week and hand quilting, my mind wanders and thinks about things a lot. And so I wanted to put this into perspective for you about your quilting stitches. And I was thinking about, you know, when we were all in elementary school and learning how to print our names with perfect penmanship. At the front of the class, there was always above the chalkboard, you know, the alphabet, your capital letters and your lowercase letters, and everything, you know, was perfect. And that was the goal for everybody in the class, was to learn how to make your capital A's perfectly. And your small, you know, lowercase a's, you have to round it just right and bring down, you know, the side just right, and it has to be on the right lines. And that was the goal for the whole class. Our handwriting was supposed to look like that. And I kind of think the same thing about quilting, with everybody saying, oh, 14, you know, stitches per inch is, you know, the golden, you know, rule, not the golden rule, but like the goal for, like, you know, the best hand quilters. And so I think none of us have handwriting that looks like each other's. Every single person that I have seen, our handwriting is distinct and, you know, unique to each one of us. Our cursive writing, our signatures are our own, and nobody's looks like those charts, you know, that we were all supposed to copy and strive for. And I feel similar to the hand quilting. It doesn't mean that you don't have to strive for your own personal perfection, but I just don't want people to get too caught up in striving for something that for them may not be attainable, or that you may not be interested in, you know, reaching that point anyway. For me, I'm not interested in reaching that. Again, like I look at my quilting as my signature. This is unique to me. This is like my fingerprint or my hand printing. My stitches are relatively uniform. Not always. Sometimes I hit a tough part, you know, going through, and things are not as even. But overall, they're even enough for me. And again, I just look at it as this is me. This is what I do for my quilting. And again, I don't know how many stitches I do per inch. I'm never going to win any awards for hand quilting, and that's okay with me. The other thing that I've tried to do, especially since I retired, is focus on maybe putting a little more hand quilting on each of my quilts. I really do enjoy hand quilting, and so I feel like it balances out. You know, you might have smaller stitches and you may have more per inch, but maybe I have more hand quilting across the whole top. I don't know, it balances out. And again, I just don't want people to beat themselves up or be too hard on themselves for where they are at in their hand quilting or hand stitching. Just remember, it's unique to you, and this is your quilt, and so this is like your signature. These are your stitches in your quilt. So besides my hand quilting, I've been working on my row quilt this week too. And I'll show you the progress that I made on it. These were embroidered pillowcases that I put into a row. And this one here was not as tall as its neighbor here. And so I took everybody's suggestion. I had really great suggestions. I had a little blue piece at the bottom here, and people suggested that I put the little piece that I embroidered with the feather design. So I ripped everything out and removed that blue piece, and I did put in that embroidered piece at the bottom of the bluebird blocks there. And I do like it much better. It was a little bit of a messy process to take it out because the fabric that was used for these pillowcases, I'm sure it came as a kit. I've seen these, you know, a lot of times. You usually get the pillowcase, and then you get the pattern, and you do the embroidery. Well, the fabric they gave was not great quality fabric. You could really see through it very easily. And so what I did is I took another part of the pillowcase and I put it on the back of it because just one part of it alone was just way too thin. So that meant when I ripped these out, that I had to rip out these two sections. And because this fabric is not the best quality, that meant I had to be very, very careful too with the seam ripper, not to damage the ends here, because it needed to fit back in to the spot, you know, where I took it out. So I took my time, and I really did take out one stitch at a time to be very, very careful with it. But as you can see, it's back in and it fits great. So that is the pillowcase row. I'm aiming for about, I'm aiming for 80 inches across on each of my rows. And then that way I'll put a small border around everything. I'll probably go with this blue that I've been using for the sashing rows. That's the other thing I've been doing is as soon as I make a row, I put a sashing strip on it. And I'm varying the width of my sashing strip. I'm not making them all the same size. Each row that I'm making in my row quilt is a different size. So I feel like I think it would be a great idea to also make the sashing a different size. And so here are the Dresden plates. For people who've been watching me for a while, I received a lot of these from a friend of mine who got boxes from her grandmother. And I did make a quilt for her, and I made a pillow for her, but I still had pieces left over. So I just sewed them together and tucked them aside, not knowing what to do with them. But now some more of them found a new home. So I have, let's see, this one on the end, on this end, and then on this end is one fabric. And then all the others that are in here are another second fabric. So I wanted to try and stay away from using white all the time as a default because I just need to challenge myself sometimes too, or think outside the box sometimes. So this back here is a light green checker. So it's like a little gingham. And then I used a green for the circle part too. And I normally would have hand appliqued these on and hand appliqued the circles on too. But right now with the quilt that I'm hand quilting, I have a lot of my day is taken up with a needle in my hand already doing hand stitching. So for this one, this time I did do this on the machine, and I tried to blend it in to a certain amount. I knew I wasn't going to be able to hide everything all the way. I wasn't aiming to, but I did want it to blend in a good amount. So I'll show you a little close up here and see. And I used a different color thread for the blue than I did for the green. The green, I did not have a green that was going to match that, so I just used something that was just a very light tan color, and I knew it was going to show a little bit, and I'm fine with that. It's not a distraction. So I got all that row done, which I was very happy about. And when they're laying out together too, I'm starting to get a feel for how things are going to look, and I think it's going to be fabulous. And the other rows that I did are all of these little blocks that were foundation paper pieced. I got the papers from various places. Some came from my sister and some came from one of my friends, Sylvia. And so I took a lot of these papers with me when I was doing some house sitting jobs. And so while the cats are playing, I just sit at my sewing machine. I just take my little sewing machine with me, and I would just do some of these blocks and set them aside. And so I had a lot of them. And so this will be another row. And I put some green and yellow at the very end here, because the pillowcases that I originally used had a lot of green and yellow in. So that was just one little way to keep the continuity of the colors. And then the others that I have here are also these little foundation paper pieced blocks. So I did spend a lot of time taking the papers off of the backs very meticulously. Some of these individual pieces in each block are very small, so the papers do come off easily, though. I don't have a problem with them. And the trees here that are in the center, I had two different sizes of trees, and even these trees that are the same size here, the pattern on them is different. But I tried to balance things out. So I put the trees in the center, and then everything to the left of it and the right of it then is a mirror image, the best that I could do with what I had to work with. And again, you can see I put the sashing strip on the bottom. So once I get these laid out, because the sashing strips are already on, I'll be able to just zip right through them and sew them together. There will be quite a few rows, because now these blocks are very small. So you need a lot of rows in order to build a quilt. These are adorable, these little houses. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left and 5 to the right, and a little tree in the middle, which are so cute. And then again, I have just these other blocks that I had. And so this is a mirror image on the other side also. Okay, and the last row that I have assembled is this one. This one is has a little bit more variety in it as far as the blocks go. I was trying to keep the blocks together that were about the same height, because there was a lot of difference actually in these blocks, and some of them not by much. If you look at the Christmas trees here, I did have to put a little tiny strip on the top to match these. So they were almost the same size in height, but not quite. And then over here, it was the same thing. These were almost the same size as the Christmas trees, but not quite. So I just put some white on there too. And so that's the last row for now. Again, it was a lot of picking out of papers and trying to make sure I got my math right. At the ends of them too, sometimes at the ends, I just put like a little spacer block here, because the math didn't work out right. in order to get exactly the number of blocks that I need to come out to 80 inches. So I would get close, and then I would just put a little spacer at the end. And then everything will get trimmed and joined together. And then this week I will work on some more rows. And let's see, one quick note about the boxes that I have here in front of me. I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to need altogether. I'm just going to keep building it until it looks like I'm reaching my goal, basically. So I don't know exactly what I need yet. But these are some of the things in these boxes that are maybe still possibilities. I don't know if they'll make it in or not. I have these cute little hearts, but I don't have a lot of them. I also have a lot of these cute little, they're very small. It's like a Jacob's ladder block, and these finish at 2.5 inches. So they're very small, but I have, you know, I have enough of them. I know I have enough that I could build a row out of these. And then the other thing I have in the box yet, I still have these little 4 patches. I have greens and oranges here and a few yellows in here that I could do something with. And I also have some half square triangles, and these are all in like the 1930s reproduction prints. And I haven't squared these up yet. I'm not really sure what the finished size on these should be, but they're a possibility. So this is my box of possibilities right now. And this is my box of things now that will not make it into this quilt. And so these will go back into other boxes where I store my things. These are solids that just don't belong in this quilt. They're just too saturated, they're too dark, and it just does not go with this quilt. So those are getting set aside. Oh, and here are the rest of the Dresden plate blades. I didn't need these because the ones that I made were enough for a whole row. So there aren't that many of these left. I think there are only 9 of these left. So it might make 4 more half circles. So they'll wait for another project. These were left over from the quilt that I just made for charity. This was part of the border that I put on. Again, those colors don't belong in this quilt. These, I had a lot of these blocks, and when I laid them out to look, I wasn't happy with the grays here. To me, again, the color of gray just does not go in this quilt. But there are quite a few of them, so I'll just have to keep those in mind for another quilt. Now these here, these are a square and a square, and again I have a lot of these, but I already have more of them, and I did pick some of them out to put in my quilt, but I tried to choose more of those that had more yellows in and more greens. There are some that have blues, and there are some that have reds. I liked how that variety looked, and so what was left over after I chose them were mostly the blues, which works because now these are almost all blues, so I think they'll easily fit into another quilt. And then the last thing in this box that did not make the cut were my browns. They just did not belong in this quilt either. But I do like to get everything out that is at least a possibility that I can see. It helps me narrow things down, and I think it's important to know what you don't want as much as it is to know what you do want. Because a lot of times too, now the ones that I chose to go into this quilt that I think will work together now narrowed this field down a little bit. And sometimes now when you look at what's left over, you'll find a lot of these now look like they will play nicely together. Not all of them, but a lot of times your leftovers then that are rejects from one quilt look like they will work well for another quilt. And then the last little box I have here is just leftovers from my trimmings. This was, I had some hexies, some hexie blocks that I was working on. And this was the back of the hexies. I just made like a diamond shape of hexagons, and I appliqued it to a white background. And this is the white part that I cut away from the back, so that I don't have to hand quilt through that. So that's what's mostly in this box. Here are some smaller blue pieces that were left over from my sashing pieces. There are some whites in here. This is just odds and ends. Here is some of the green. You can see I cut away the back side of those Dresden plates, so I didn't have to quilt through this on the back side of those. So that's what a lot of this is here. So this whole box is now things that I have to cut down into usable shapes that will then go in my storage system boxes. So that's where I'm at on this, and that'll wrap it up for me this week. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. I really appreciate it. And we will do like a little bit of a close-up on the quilt on the door before I go. I just wanted to say that's an old quilt that my sister made for me decades ago. It's a Sunbonnet Sue with pale pinks and a blue star in the middle, and it is hand quilted. So we'll get a closer look at that. So until next week, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you. Bye-bye.